What's up, guys? I'm Alex with BFE Adventures, and today I'm going to give you 3 key tips for riding off-road. Stay tuned. All right, guys, so we just got back from a trip down to Arkansas. One of our training tours down there had an absolute blast, and one thing that I loved about this tour was there was quite a few people on there that were a little wet behind the ears still, and so we got to do a lot of training while we were out on the road, and it was incredible. So one thing that became abundantly clear while we were out on this trip was some of the new things that I kind of forget about as far as teaching somebody until I see it firsthand, and then it gives me, a good idea of certain things I can portray to you guys. And so, first off, before we start, I apologize for random bugs flying around. It's summer in Southern Illinois, and so I had the garage door open all they're flying all over the place. But anyway, I'm going to talk about 3 key components to riding off-road and some of the things that may seem basic to some of you that have ridden for a while, but it's good to revisit those. And it was good for me to revisit those while we were coaching them. So a lot of times, if we have a small enough group, we can just patch into their comms and we'll just coach them in real time while we're going down the road. So they get to still have the benefit of the tour, but also get some one-on-one coaching with us. And so I'm going to start just by kind of sitting on the bike here. It's all loaded up. I actually am just loaded up preemptively for Adventure Palooza in a couple weeks, and just wanted to make sure everything fit well on the 690. So this old girl is geared up for 2 days worth of camping, and it all fits perfectly fine. So in case you're wondering, 690 hauls it just fine. So anyway, I'm going to swing a leg over this steed here and explain a few things. So one of the things that I noticed right out of the gate with the newest rider that was with us was transitioning once we got on the gravel from the street. It was pretty obvious that he was uncomfortable with gravel. And one of the first things I can tell you, whether it's dirt, gravel, grass, sand, anything like that, the bike is going to dance underneath of you. And I can tell you that seated on the bike, it's going to feel way more dramatic than if you can just dissociate your body a little bit from the actual bike. It's much easier once you do that. And so standing is going to be key for a lot of off-road riding. Do you have to stand all the time when you ride? No. So there will be all kinds of differing opinions on this. When to stand up, when not to stand up. I'm going to let you decide that because it's different for everyone. My opinion is when things get hairy, it's always better to be standing. Most people would agree with that. But when it's not necessarily hairy, I typically stand just to give my butt a break. Most of the time, whenever I'm just looking up the trail, I'll see a bump coming, for example, and if I'm riding all day and I see a bump and I know I'm going to be standing soon, I'll go ahead and use that kick of the bump to go ahead and just stand up. Anytime you can conserve energy while riding for a long time, it's a great way to conserve energy. So most of the time, I'll stand whenever I'm going to hit a bump. So anyway, one of the things that I saw this rider doing right out of the gate, and this is what I want to point out, so if you're doing this, stop doing that. First off is super rigid, okay? It was like white knuckle as soon as we were going, and you could tell he just wasn't very comfortable. And most of that gets accentuated when you're nervous. So you'll tighten down on the bike, and when that happens, then all of the input you get from the bar feels much more dramatic, and any little bump and just anything like that is going to make it even more nerve-wracking. So when you find yourself getting a little nervous, just relax for a little bit and you'd be amazed at what can happen. So if you find yourself getting tired or wearing out, then you're probably gripping the bars too hard. So just relax, let them sit there, let your fingers rest on the levers, however you want to do it, 1 finger, 2 finger, I don't really care. So the major thing when you're doing this, the first thing I wanted to talk about as far as the 3 things is, 1 is body positioning in relation to what you're riding, traction to which tire you're trying to put traction to, and then 3 would be leaning and throttle input. Those are like the 3 big things that come into play with riding off-road. And so one of the first things I saw him do when we were standing, just going down a gravel road leisurely, was he was right off of the bike, just like this. His legs were kind of away from the bike, and very rigid legs. His feet, I'm going to try and do it more. You might not even be able to see that in the camera, but basically my feet, my lower legs are straight down into the pegs, and he was kind of back like this, so his weight was getting transferred right through the bottom of his feet, and which it should, but straight down towards the ground in relation to the bike, just straight perpendicular with the ground. And that's not a good place you want to be when you're trying to do something aggressive or braking or anything like that. And so the first thing we had to realize to let him know is, hey, man, you need to loosen up a little bit and maybe get your butt a little higher off the seat. I understand if you're really aggressively riding through the woods, you want to be in this attack position way down. Now, you do want your knees way forward, and I'll get to that in a second, but you want to be in this attack position. That makes sense. Elbows up, chest forward, and seeing down the trail. And you want to be ready for anything and let the bike dance, and you're taking a lot of impact with your legs, and that's if you're riding very aggressively. Most of the time on an adventure bike or a dual sport bike, you're not riding that like that. I mean, most people, plenty of people do. So keyboard warriors, keep it to yourself. But for the most part, most people are not riding like that. And so you just have to maintain traction to the rear wheel when you need it. And that's the most important thing. Other than that, the more you can relax, the better, and the longer you'll be able to ride. So one of the things that I want you to always be cognizant of, again, I don't really know if you can see all this in the video, but you need to make sure and remember always that the vector of your lower leg, so if you just drew a line through my lower leg, that is where your weight is getting transferred as far as traction is concerned. So when you want traction to your rear wheel, you need to be cognizant of which way your leg's facing. Okay, so if I'm back here with my butt way back like this, yes, you're getting pressure because of your body weight over the rear tire, but you're still putting weight perpendicular with the ground. So a lot of times, like for example, when you're climbing a hill, you'd want to be farther forward, obviously because you're going uphill, you don't want to fall off the back, but then you still are maintaining that vector from your knee to your feet towards the back tire. That way you're pushing traction back into the dirt through your rear tire. That's what's giving you traction. So that is something to think about when you're going uphill. Okay, so to go back to body positioning when you're on flat gravel, okay, let's just go back to the basics. You're just wanting to cruise down a gravel road and stand up. Remember that the bike will always squirm around underneath of you on gravel, and that's okay. It's going to do that. And so it's much better to have a more relaxed position. You don't want a lot of pressure on your hands. I'll tell you when we want pressure on the front wheel, but just cruising down the road is not then, okay? So when you're in proper position, you should be able to just stand on your bike like this, wiggle it around because my knees are locked into the bike. I'm not squeezing it. I'm just simply allowing my hips to rotate in so that my knees are against the tank and, well, in this case, just the bike. And notice I can move the bike around underneath of me and allow it to shift underneath of me with just my knees. And nothing feels uncomfortable here. I'm totally relaxed. Whenever I have my hands on the bars, this bike is set up for me, obviously. So I'm super relaxed right here. And whenever I'm just cruising down a gravel road, I'm wearing motocross boots most of the time. And so I will sit with the balls of my feet on the foot pegs and allow my boots to just kind of hold me up. And I keep my knees locked into the bike. I still have a little bit of vector towards the rear tire, so that way I can always just give her a little gas and it has enough traction still. If I'm too far forward or I'm not in a very aggressive stance and I give it gas, the bike's either going to run away from me, out from underneath of me, and then it's going to grab traction when my butt goes back. Or if I'm way too far forward and my front's too weighted and I give it gas, it's just going to spin the rear tire. So there's like a happy medium where you keep that vector of your knee to your foot towards the rear tire and you're just relaxed, resting on the bike. This is typically how you should be while you're just cruising down a gravel road and occasionally you want to have some fun. This would be the position you're in. Again, going up a hill, you're going to want to lean a little farther forward, squat down a little bit more so you get that vector towards your rear tire. And you don't want to super weight the front wheel because you want it to be able to dance as it's going up the hill. You want it to go over stuff still. You don't want to get stopped. So you're kind of back with your butt back, and that way you're lower. The bike is tilted up a little bit, and if that makes sense, all of my pressure is still towards the back tire for traction when we're going up an incline. Now, when you're going downhill, obviously you don't want to be leaning like this. You do want grip on your front tire to slow down, but a lot of times you should be trailing with your back brake going down a really steep hill. And that's where you would have your butt back and you're touching the feather in the rear brake or whatever you're doing to slow down. So the other thing I want to add is when you are wanting to be cool and power slide. If you've ever seen pictures or videos of people, you know, all the KTM commercials of them power sliding around corners, you'll notice they're up over the front and they're kind of leaned forward like this. Again, my vector is going towards my rear tire for traction whenever I need it. And then they're weighting the pegs a certain way to induce that slide, okay? So something that is hugely important that I probably should have stated earlier just to stress the importance, but it fits here. When you're riding off-road, you're actually wanting to weight the outside peg when you're going fast around a corner. Seems counterintuitive. If you're used to street, you can rely on the traction of the tires on the tarmac so that you can, you know, throw your body inside, allow the tires to stick, and you're maintaining a vector of keeping the bike stuck to the road this way. Now, when you're in gravel, you're actually wanting, you know, if the bike's leaned ever so slightly like this to go around a corner, if I put pressure on the inside leg, you can see the bike right now is wanting to go over. So if I'm doing this on gravel and I weight my inside foot and give it gas, it's going to low side right out from underneath of me. So in gravel situations or off-road situations, when you're wanting to break the back tire loose, you want to keep your body forward a little bit so that your weight is on towards the front of the bike. You want that front tire to get traction. That way you can steer it through the corner however you need to, but you're wanting to weight the outside of the bike, and you'll notice the bike's wanting to stand back up here whenever I do that. That's what it should do, because you don't want the bike to low side out from underneath of you. You want to keep pressure on the outside peg, and that's actually going to put traction into your rear tire. I hope that makes sense if you can see the way it's dancing underneath of me. So when I'm going around a turn, let's say I'm making a left-hand turn, you know, you obviously turn the bars to get it to turn, and then you start giving it gas, and as you're sliding the rear, that's whenever you're counter steering to allow, you know, the bike to do the fun stuff. And you are still weighting this outside tire to keep pressure on that back tire to keep traction as you're going. And then you just modulate that traction with your wrist. I know that seems like a lot, but I'm going to water it down to the main few things at the end here. And if you take anything away from this whole video, take away this last 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure that you are as relaxed as possible. Next thing, make sure that the vector of your knee to your foot is putting pressure towards your rear, or putting that line towards your rear tire in situations that you need traction. Keep your knees tight to the bike, not gripping so tight that it's making your legs shake. Just turn your heels out ever so slightly if you have to allow your knees to fall and lock into the bike. And then just modulate your body in relation to the physics of the situation. If the bike is tilted up, you get closer to the bike. You don't want to lean way back. If you're going up a hill, it'll loop out from underneath of you. You stay tight to the bike and keep that traction to the rear wheel. If you're going downhill, that's whenever you would put your weight farther back like that, because the bike's going down ahead of you. And that's whenever you want some traction towards your front tire still, even though your weight's on the back. So that's when your legs are more up and down, because then the pressure is going through your feet perpendicular with the ground and you're getting even braking pressure. When you're just cruising on a gravel road, the most important thing is to be relaxed. So that was like the main things. Now I'm going to go into a little nuance here one more time. And that is one of the things that the guy I was talking to was worried about, and this is different schools of thought, do what you want here, but he thought that he had to keep his heels on the foot pegs so that he could still reach his controls, his foot controls at all times. This is going to be 100% my opinion, so do with it what you will. But when you're cruising down a gravel road, you should always be able to just pick your right foot up and step on the brake. So the need for your foot to just be on it right then at all times is not necessary most of the time. When you're in the woods and you're going down hills and stuff, yes, that's when your heel should be on the peg, and that's when you should be modulating the brake a lot, and that would make sense. When you're just cruising down a gravel road, within a half a second, you should be able to put your foot on the brake if you need it. Other than that, let your boots kind of set you up. And same with shifting. Like if you're just cruising down the road, you shouldn't have to shift all the time. If you are, pick a different speed so that you don't have to do that. So that's kind of it for wrapping everything together. I hope that made sense to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, ask any questions below the video. I'd be happy to answer those for you. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know. If you're interested in going on a training tour with us, if you'd like to learn directly from us, we would love to have you. Simply go to bfeadventures.com or reach out to us on here, and I'd be happy to chat with you. Other than that, take care and have a great night, guys.